Hello, welcome to the third part of a week of Barons. Third part-ish. I kind of put that last one up at like 1 in the morning. But I was stuck in traffic, so it's not my fault entirely. But this one sort of has the codename Crystal, because it does that, and has clear barrel spacers. But that's not really its name. I don't really have a good name for this. It's basically just a microdart rebarreled Baron with a front priming indicator, so all of your enemies know that you're ready to blast them, I guess. And also because I wanted to light at the front to help me see things. But I'll get to that later. For now, let's open it up and show you what's going on. Well, now that I've got the battery in here and I've shown you what everything in here looks like, I'll explain a few things. I've got this set up. I have a nice spring-loaded negative on my 3-volt battery to a blue 3-volt LED with a lot of extra wire because there's a ton of extra wire in here for some reason that I should, trim and resolder, but I'll get to that someday. Um, so as I hope you were able to see, um, the positive lead, which is a yellow wire in this, goes into the positive terminal on the battery, which has 2 pinholes in it for some reason. This trigger has a spring, unlike the last Baron that's still in a Baron shell that I showed you. A couple of differences with that is that the cover on the catch spring is black. Instead of a or not a flathead, but like a washer head screw in here, which there was on that one originally, but I gutted that one like I explained. And that one has a spring, or a screw here to hold the return spring, but they decided to go with an all ABS post, as well as on here, which holds the spring for the flappy thing, as I call it. They use what I call a plastic rivet, where they kind of just take a disc with a stem and they heat it up, and then they shove it into something and it cools and it gets like that. I have an extra screw down here below the trigger because there's an empty post there, because, for structural reasons, but they didn't want to spend the cost on a screw, but I just have the screw in here because. And then this is an switch out of some kind of an N-Strike electronic blaster, which basically for me means it either came out of my Strife or my Baron. Yeah. Came out of one of those two, and it's wired to this LED. And I'm using it currently, well, as you can probably tell, as a priming indicator. One thing to note, because this is the 2nd generation of Baron, I guess, the cheaper costing one, whereas this, the Wingmaster from the first video, is the 1st generation one, which has more metal in it, or more screws, which cost more in production. So they lighten things. They redid the way the shell is built here for some reason, which makes it really easy to put a battery in here. So I kind of, went overboard and did a really good job on this part, which, it's super well done, I think. Not to toot my own horn, but that was probably the pinnacle of my soldering work right here in this blaster. And then we have up here a ton of extra wire that needs to be trimmed, which I will get to someday. But other than that, this stuff I made here on this desk. All of this I made here. This I made back home in my dad's shop in his hardware store. This is a 3/16 or 1/4 inch thick plate of acrylic, and this front half here, if you can tell, there's 2 layers here. This back layer is plexiglass, and this used to be as thick as this, but as you can see, this is a stock Baron turret. That's just slightly thicker than this. So imagine if you have something that's already slightly thicker, and then you add another, like, 1/8 inch thick layer. That's the clearance isn't there. So I had to sit there for probably an hour and a half with a file and some sandpaper and make this the size that it is. And this side here, I got it super, super smooth. You'll notice there's cracking in it, but there's not cracking on this. You can see there are edges on here, though, from the grinder that I used to get the shape. Because it's a stationary bench grinder. You just hit a switch and the 2 wheels spin up. I just kind of held it up to that till it was the shape that I wanted. This, however, is cracked. That's because I used general purpose PVC. And there's a damn ad going on back here. So unprofessional. That'll get it out. But yeah, this is cracked from the adhesive I used to stick the 2 of them together. Obviously, I prepared them both with sandpaper, and then did this, and I think I probably used 600 grit sandpaper because that was what we had in the shop, or what my dad had in his shop. And you can see how crazy this one crack here is. It kind of comes around in a loop, but it it's structural enough. I mean, it's going to work. It's not going to continue to crack. And even if it does continue to crack, it's going to hold together because the cracks aren't the same in both pieces of material, so they'll kind of crisscross, and it'll be kind of like if you smack a car windshield with a baseball bat and it doesn't punch a hole in it. It'll be like that, but not. It's. I wish you could feel how smooth this is. It's better than this was when it was new. So, well, I suppose I'll put this back together, fire it off a bunch. I've got this loaded with 2 Adventure Force darts. You can kind of see the way that this is half-inch CPVC, which is seriously necked down at the bottom here. That's not to fit those holes, not entirely, but that's because of all the filing I did on the top of the surface. It ate into that too because I had to get up close. Look at the bottom of the dart though. How not round it is. And I've tested this. Unlike the Wingmaster, it is going to fire these and brand new conditioned ones just fine. And one thing about the thickness of this, or one of these, is like the Wingmaster, I kept having to push. I'd have to push the plunger tube back, which pushes against the plunger head, which pushes the back of the plunger rod here. So many plunger parts. Pushes that all back so that you can get the hook on this priming bar into there to pull it back. This doesn't have that issue though, because of the thickness of your Baron barrels or this. And right now I can't put this back in, but it's just no fun because you can't see the light through that properly. I mean, I could probably drill a hole in here and put the LED through it and do that to all 6 of these that I have, which it's important that I have 6 of these loose, trust me. I'm going to put the LED in between these 2 plates and try to keep the wiring in between the 2 plates as well, because we don't want them creating an air gap, nor do we want them sticking out of the front of the blaster. Just kind of wrestle that down into there. And right now I want it loose because, well, I haven't finished that end of the circuit yet, as I've hopefully explained by now. But yeah, so basically you can tell that when I pull this priming bar, which will be attached to the slide, back, it'll pull the plunger rod back here, and it'll touch on the tab on the front of the switch, which has been rounded down and sanded, and it's super buttery smooth on there too. Just fit this back together. And now, it's all back together, and there's light. One reason for that, actually, is because for a while, before I had the front of this sanded down, I think that was the problem, is I couldn't tell if it was primed or not. So, and it fires super reliably. that one fired both of them because the alignment on the holes I drilled into that plexiglass plate are not perfect. Now, I have those 2 layers there, and that's for a reason, is because one, the plexiglass plate has 2 small holes that line up with the holes that allow it to index, and the acrylic plate has 2 9/16-ish holes, 5/8-ish holes, drilled to hold the barrel material. So I glued the CPVC into the acrylic first, and then I glued that onto the plexiglass plate so that it would have a secure air seal. It's a very structural way to do something like that, because if I just use the big 5/8 holes, the outer diameter of half-inch CPVC is 5/8 of an inch. If I had done that, the air would get into both of the barrels at once, like it did there on that last shot. It would also help if I didn't have my bottom barrel on, or my top barrel on the bottom. And these barrels are mixed up. The orange one's supposed to be on top, and the green one's supposed to be on the bottom. But I haven't had this thing apart often enough, or recently enough to have remembered to do that. It's been a while since I finished this mod. That's it. See ya.